Most people think mental strength means never feeling fear, sadness, stress, or doubt. It doesn't. A mentally strong person can feel all of these things. The difference is what happens next. When life becomes difficult, some people immediately assume that everything is falling apart. Their thoughts become more negative. Their emotions become harder to control. And eventually, the problem outside them becomes a problem inside their mind. But mentally strong people respond differently. They still experience pain. They still become frustrated. They still have moments when they feel overwhelmed. But they have learned something extremely important. Pain does not automatically mean defeat. And that simple difference can completely change how a person handles difficult situations. One of the biggest misunderstandings about resilience is that mentally strong people don't care. They do care. In fact, they may feel emotions very deeply. Mental strength isn't about eliminating emotions. It is about developing the ability to experience an emotion without allowing it to control every decision you make. Imagine receiving unexpected bad news. Your first reaction might be fear. Your mind immediately starts creating possible disasters. What if everything gets worse? What if I can't handle this? What if there is no solution? These thoughts can make the original problem feel even larger. A mentally strong person may have exactly the same first reaction, but instead of immediately following every thought, they create a small psychological distance. They recognize the emotion. They recognize the thought. Then they ask, what can I actually do about this? That question changes the direction of the mind. Instead of reacting automatically, the person begins responding deliberately. When something goes wrong, the human brain has a tendency to predict what happens next. And those predictions are often more frightening than reality. You lose an opportunity. Your mind says you will never get another one. Someone rejects you. Your mind says nobody will ever appreciate you. You make a mistake. Your mind says you are a failure. But these are not facts. They are interpretations. Psychologists often describe this kind of thinking as catastrophizing, imagining the worst possible outcome and treating it as if it were already happening. Mentally strong people learn to challenge this process. They ask, what do I know for certain? What am I assuming? What is actually within my control? This doesn't magically remove the problem, but it prevents the mind from adding unnecessary suffering to it. One of the most powerful psychological habits is learning to separate what you can control from what you cannot. You cannot control what another person thinks about you. You cannot control whether someone rejects you. You cannot control the past. You cannot control every unexpected event. But you can control your response. You can control whether you prepare. You can control what you do next. You can control whether you learn from the experience. This distinction is closely connected to the idea of an internal locus of control. It means believing that your own actions can meaningfully influence your life, rather than assuming everything is determined by external circumstances. Mentally strong people don't waste all their energy fighting reality. They ask, what part of this situation belongs to me? Then they work on that part. Failure hurts. There is no psychological advantage in pretending otherwise. But mentally strong people are careful about the meaning they attach to failure. There is a huge difference between saying, I failed, and saying, I am a failure. The first describes an event. The second turns an event into an identity. That distinction matters. If you believe failure proves something permanently negative about you, every mistake becomes a threat to your identity. You become afraid to try. You avoid difficult situations. You protect yourself from embarrassment. And eventually, avoiding failure becomes more important than pursuing growth. Mentally strong people try to see failure as information. Something didn't work. Why? What was missing? What can be changed? What can be learned? The failure remains real, but it no longer gets to define the person. Your brain naturally tries to protect you from discomfort. When something feels difficult, the easiest response is often avoidance. Don't have the difficult conversation. Don't apply for the opportunity. Don't start again. Don't take the risk. Don't expose yourself to criticism. Avoidance can create temporary relief. But there is a problem. The brain can learn from avoidance. If you repeatedly escape something uncomfortable, your mind may begin treating that discomfort as evidence that the situation is dangerous. This can make the fear stronger over time. Mentally strong people gradually learn something different. Feeling uncomfortable does not necessarily mean something is wrong. Sometimes discomfort means you're learning. Sometimes it means you're changing. Sometimes it simply means you're doing something difficult. The goal isn't to become comfortable with everything. The goal is to become capable of functioning even when you aren't comfortable. Another important characteristic of psychological resilience is independence from constant approval. Human beings are social creatures. Being accepted matters. Criticism can hurt. Rejection can hurt even more. But if your emotional stability depends entirely on other people's opinions, you give those opinions enormous power over your life. A mentally strong person can listen to criticism without automatically accepting it. They can ask, is this criticism accurate? Is there something useful here? Is this person's opinion based on facts? Or is it simply their perspective? They don't have to prove themselves to everyone. And they understand that being misunderstood is sometimes unavoidable. Acceptance doesn't mean liking a situation. It doesn't mean giving up. It means recognizing reality as it actually is. If something already happened, wishing it hadn't happened doesn't reverse it. If someone has already made a decision, arguing with reality inside your head doesn't change that decision. If a difficult situation exists, pretending that it won't make it disappear. Acceptance creates a starting point. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? A resilient person eventually asks, given that this is happening, what should I do now? That shift may sound small. Psychologically, it is enormous. Mental strength is not always about fighting harder. Sometimes it is about knowing what is no longer worth fighting. You can spend years trying to change another person's personality. You can repeatedly revisit an old mistake. You can obsess over something that happened years ago. You can keep chasing approval from someone who has already decided not to give it. None of that gives you control. Resilient people learn that letting go is not always weakness. Sometimes it is an efficient use of psychological energy. They stop asking themselves to solve problems that cannot be solved, and they redirect that energy toward the things they can still influence. This may be one of the hardest lessons to accept. Life does not always reward good behavior immediately. Good people can experience terrible situations. Hard work can fail. Honest people can be misunderstood. People can do everything correctly and still lose. Mentally strong people don't necessarily have a more optimistic view of reality. Sometimes they simply have a more realistic one. They understand that difficulty is part of life. So when difficulty arrives, it doesn't completely destroy their expectations. They don't think, this shouldn't be happening. They think, this is difficult, but difficult things happen. That mindset reduces the shock. And when reality becomes less surprising, it becomes easier to respond to it. Mental strength isn't usually created during one dramatic moment. It is built through repetition. Every time you do something difficult instead of immediately escaping it, you teach yourself something. Every time you recover from disappointment, you learn that disappointment is survivable. Every time you make a mistake and continue, you weaken the belief that mistakes are catastrophic. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you build trust in your own ability to act. This is why resilience can become stronger through practice. Not because the person becomes invincible, but because the brain accumulates evidence. I've handled difficult things before. I survived that. I adapted. I can handle the next problem too. That internal evidence becomes psychological strength. Resilience doesn't mean bouncing back instantly. Sometimes recovery takes time. A mentally strong person can admit, this hurt me. They can acknowledge disappointment. They can take a break. They can ask for support. They can change their strategy. And then they continue. This is important because pretending to be unaffected isn't the same as being strong. Real resilience allows the experience to matter without allowing it to permanently control the future. The goal isn't to become a person who never breaks down. The goal is to become a person who knows how to rebuild. There is one final quality that connects all of these behaviors. Flexibility. A rigid mind says, this is how things were supposed to happen. A resilient mind says, this is what happened. Now what? That difference allows adaptation. When circumstances change, mentally strong people can change their approach without completely losing their sense of identity. They can change plans. They can admit mistakes. They can learn. They can start again. And perhaps most importantly, they don't confuse changing direction with losing. Sometimes changing direction is exactly how you continue moving forward. Mental strength doesn't mean becoming emotionless. It means becoming harder to control through your emotions. It doesn't mean avoiding pain. It means learning that pain can be survived. It doesn't mean never failing. It means refusing to turn failure into an identity. And it doesn't mean becoming someone who never struggles. It means becoming someone who can struggle, recover, adapt, and continue. Because the strongest mind isn't the one that never gets shaken. It's the one that gets shaken and still finds a way to stand again. If this video helped you see mental strength differently, subscribe for more psychology and self-growth videos, and keep building a mind that life can't easily break.